Okay, the shorthanded Pelicans beat the Dallas Mavericks. I'll explain how they got this win after getting blown out the night before by the Denver Nuggets. Plus, it's time for Jordan Hawkins to get more minutes. It's a live episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all, it's a Saturday night right after the Pelicans beat the Dallas Mavericks, a shorthanded Pelicans team, unexpectedly getting that win here. And yeah, that was pretty cool, kind of unexpected because that looked like a schedule loss. We'll break down why the Pelicans were able to get this victory one night after getting smoked by the Denver Nuggets. Denver Nuggets, they played their starters against, didn't in this one. What was the difference? We'll explain it here. Plus, we're going to talk about Jordan Hawkins, Jonas Valanciunas, some of the tactical things you saw from head coach Willie Green in this one. It's a lot to cover. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are the #1 Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, covering the team like nobody else does, whether it's trade targets. We've looked at those really recently, whether it's the X's and O's, and we'll get into the defense and why they've played so well coming up this week. This will count as the Monday episode of Locked On Pelicans as well. They have a game. We'll post a show on Monday afternoon, a little bit later after, again, playing the Dallas Mavericks. But let's get into today's show is brought to you by Jase Medical here as well. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50+ infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com and use code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. That's jasemedical.com. All right, let's get into this game here because this was a big win by the Pelicans. Look, They bucked the traditional strategic tactical thinking in the NBA of if you're going to rest your starters, you rest them against the team you're likely going to have kind of need them for. In this case, it would be the Denver Nuggets, the better team. And then you play them against the worst team. And we knew that Luka Doncic wasn't going to be playing in this one for the New Orleans Pelicans. And they risked it, right? They played him against the Denver Nuggets, lost by a lot, didn't play him in this one, leading to a potential for them to lose. You could have gone 0-2 during this instead of going 1-1. 1-1, given they bucked the traditional wisdom, is actually a really big deal, in my opinion. If they had lost this game, that would have been what I would have been leading the show off with, being like, should they have rested them against the Denver Nuggets, played them here against the Dallas Mavericks? And luckily, because they played so well, and we'll break down why they played so well and who played so well, and we'll also look at the game against the Denver Nuggets, you don't need to worry about that. So sometimes the analysis is, hindsight is 20/20 here. But the Pelicans played really well in this game. First and foremost, they showed up. Now, the Dallas Mavericks do this. When they play a shorthanded team, they don't often show up. They have 2 losses to the Memphis Grizzlies like this, and now this one to the Pelicans here, where honestly, they probably had more talent out there on the court. But the Pelicans executed better, played significantly better in this one, and they did it without Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, and Trey Murphy. That's 3 starters and arguably 4 of your best 5 players. 4 of your best 6 players for sure. And then they went out and, I don't want to say clobbered the Dallas Mavericks, but really kept them at arm's length for much of the second half, particularly after that big third quarter. Third quarter has been a problem for the Pelicans throughout the year. However, when you win at 39-27, that's definitely going to be able to get it done. And the Pelicans just did such a good job in this game of executing. Right? You had standout play. Jordan Hawkins, 34 points. That's a career high for him. We'll talk about him more coming up in the next segment of this episode of Locked On Pelicans. You had a great game from Dyson Daniels, right? You had Larry Nance Jr. off the bench look fantastic. You had Jonas Valanciunas doing work against a smaller, undersized team. But everyone was just working together. And you see it in terms of some of the numbers here, right? They had 29 assists on 39 made baskets. That's an incredibly high percentage. I think every shot throughout the first quarter was assisted on. I might be a little bit off on that. The numbers haven't updated for me here. But that shows you that the ball was moving. And when the ball moves like that, one of the things we've talked about is spacing being an issue, not enough shooting in the starting lineup. They take 33s per game. That's not enough. They took 30 in this one. But when the ball moves like that, when you let the ball do the work for you, finding the open man, crisp passes, everyone in sync, you saw it, whether it was Jose Alvarado dishing the ball, Herb Jones dishing the ball, Dyson Daniels dishing the ball, Jordan Hawkins dishing the ball. All of these guys had tons of assists in this game, right? Herb Jones with 3. Jonas Valanciunas, point Jonas, 7 in this one. Hawkins with 4. Dyson Daniels with 7. Alvarado with 4. Larry Nance Jr. with 3. All of these were really strong performances and just the ball moving. And when the ball moves like that and there's off-ball movement, you saw Herb Jones cutting. You saw Larry Nance Jr. cutting. We'll talk more about Larry in the third segment here too. Just basically going out and executing. Knowing that the Dallas Mavericks were weak on the inside, they don't really have that kind of big man center to give them what they need on the defensive side of the ball. And that works here, right? And without that, there was a gaping hole there for the Pelicans to take advantage of, and they absolutely did, right? No Derek Lively here for them is a big problem. Dwight Powell was torched in this one. You have Maxi Kleber coming in off the bench, a big man for him, but this is his first game back from injury, basically, I think all year, or for the most part of the year. There's no depth there. So it allowed Jonas, when you got the ball and played inside out, drew the defense because they were so worried about him. And then he passed out to open shooters, or you just move the ball till you find the right guy, or guys just being in sync. Jose knowing where to put the ball for these guys, right? Whether it's to Herb Jones for a corner 3, whether it's to Jordan Hawkins and his off-ball movement, it just leads to very good things. There are multiple ways to space a court. 3-point shooting is the easiest of that, right? And with Zion, you certainly need that because he changes the way that you play offense. But in this one, it was collapse the defense on Jonas, then move the ball around till you find an open shooter or a guy cutting. They did it. It was just simple, good execution against a team that was kind of playing down a little bit to them as well. So I loved what we saw. That says something, right? This opens up the argument here of the Pelicans being one of the deeper teams in the league. I don't think they're the deepest. I don't think they're the deepest. Trey Murphy said it the other day here that, they feel that this is maybe the deepest team in the league, or we need to put them in that conversation. Maybe. I don't know how many teams Jose is going to necessarily play on, but when he gives you that kind of energy and his shooting has been good this year, he keeps proving me wrong. When Najee Marshall brings that kind of energy off the bench to elevate this team, which he routinely does, you got to play him, and he should be getting minutes, right? In the starting lineup, making an impact there too. And then when you find that Jordan Hawkins is capable of scoring 34 points on 19 shot attempts, that is absurd, y'all. That's real good efficiency there. We love efficiency here. 6 of 12 from 3. By the way, he does more than just shoot. He gets the line. You know what? Let's talk about Jordan Hawkins coming up here next, because you get it. The Pelicans played well. They executed. They took it to this Dallas Mavericks team. That's a credit to them because, by the way, they got to their hotel at like 5 a.m. after playing on the second night of a back-to-back, leaving Denver, flying straight to Dallas, probably getting very little sleep, and more or less just going right and playing this game. This is a heck of a win by a shorthanded team missing all of those good players. They should be proud of this one. As a Pelicans fan, you should be proud of them too. Sometimes it just takes executing well, going out, playing hard, just 10 turnovers on the night compared to 29 assists. Fantastic performance all around. Let's talk about Jordan Hawkins, some of the other guys coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I'm excited to tell you about Jace Medical. Look, we come to this show to talk about basketball because it's fun. It's kind of escaping the crazy realities of real life. But let's talk about real life and preparing for it here for just a minute. According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of one of the worst flu seasons in over a decade. Other medicines as well, they're running out of. It's kind of scary, right? And you can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if someone you love gets sick while a supply chain issue kept them from getting life-saving medication they need. Everyone can be okay, though, because of Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others, stuff that could happen to all of us. So visit JaceMedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It's going to be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. Look, throw it in your go bag for hurricane season, which we're out of right now, but you never know for the future. If you're evacuating, maybe your doctor is too, you can't get medications filled, Jase case can be a lifesaver. So it's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to JaceMedical.com, use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. That's Jase Medical, Jase Medical.com. Offer code LOCKEDON for $20 off your order. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, breaking down everything you want to know about this Pelicans team here, whether it's trade targets, whether it's the X's and O's, whether it's just breaking down why they had a big win tonight versus the Dallas Mavericks after getting pummeled by the Denver Nuggets with the starters the night before. Plus, we'll do a shorter bonus segment here. It won't be the 30 minutes we did after the win over the Golden State Warriors, but we'll do a 4th bonus segment for all y'all hanging out here on the Locked On Pelicans YouTube page, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'll take your questions then, save them for the kind of bonus 4th segment. You'll see what I do where it's like I end the show, but we actually keep going. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll answer your questions here. I see a couple of good ones in the chat. Get to them coming up in a little bit. But if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments. And if you're not, try being one. Listen Monday through Friday. Or if you listen one day a week, I don't know, listen 2 days a week. All those things help keep the show free and 5 days a week for y'all here. So what we thought was probably going to be a schedule loss for the Pelicans. That's why you look at the schedule and go like, they're not winning this game. Whether it's a tough team, whether it's the second night of a back-to-back, whether it's a lot of travel, whether it's injuries or other things, you just kind of look at that and go, yeah, like they're not going to win this game. How many of y'all raised your hand in the chat, thought that this was going to be a schedule loss? Because I did. Look, I'll be honest here. If they were going to lose, I was probably not going to do a live show now. But when they win like that, and it's kind of a bit of a surprise, but also not a surprise, right? This team has competed. They have played hard. Even against the Denver Nuggets, they were competing in the 4th quarter, too little, too late to try and get that win. Zion played very well in the 4th. So if you thought this was a schedule loss, let me know. And then the Pelicans come out and surprise us like this. And this is a sign of growth. We'll get more into that in the 3rd segment of today's show. We talk kind of tactical adjustments, what they were doing versus what they did wrong against the Denver Nuggets. This one, though, look, it's going to be a whole lot easier to win when you have a guy that plays like he did in Jordan Hawkins here. The Pelicans rookie who's had, I don't want to say an up and down season, right? Because he's been, for the most part, very good, with everything here. I said underhanded Pelicans win. Oh, okay. Sorry. That was on Twitter. Anyway, with the Pelicans, he's been not an up and down season. He's played relatively well, but he's been out there, but he's played, then he's been benched, then he's gotten little minutes, then he goes back to no minutes. It's been a roller coaster for him. But when you can go out and put up 34 points on 19 shots, how many players on the Pelicans team can do this? B.I. can do this. Zion can do this. CJ can do this. Trey can do this. You have 4 guys that are capable of kind of exploding for points. You have a 5th that can come off the bench. That guy needs to be playing. Straight up, after this, it's a career high for the Pelicans rookie, right? This is the 3rd, the Pelicans tweeted out, this is the 3rd highest scoring game for a rookie this season. Think about that for a second. That's how well he's played. He needs to be in the rotation. They need more shooting around Zion Williamson, around Brandon Ingram, even around Jonas Valanciunas, and when CJ's running that second unit. More of that's only going to be a good thing for this team. Hawkins provides it. We've seen some of the bench guys not give you the scoring that you need. Scoring is how you win in 2024 in the NBA. The defense is good, but the defense also allows them to get out in transition and run and score efficiently. And when you have guys that can't take advantage of that, it hurts you. Jordan Hawkins can. We look at points per shot attempt a lot here, right? 34 points on 19 shots is incredible efficiency. It's about making the most of every possession. Players are good in the NBA, right? So if you can get anywhere close to like 1.2 points per shot attempt, that's really good. If you can get above that, that's incredible. Anything over 1.5 is awesome. You get close to 2, you've had an amazing game. Jordan Hawkins in this one, the points per shot attempt was 1.789. So basically, let's round it up and call it 1.8. Those are Zion Williamson-esque numbers. It comes from the three-point shot, worth more than a 2. Adds up. But he does more than just score. He rebounded well in this one. He passed the ball well in this one, right? He attacked the basket. It wasn't just the three-point shot, right? He got to the line attacking. He did everything. There was a well-rounded, complete offensive game for him here. And that's what you want to see from the rookie. That's how he's going to get into this lineup, or should get into this lineup. It's worth noting that when David Griffin, vice president of basketball operations, basically the guy who runs the Pelicans, was on the broadcast on Friday saying, look, he hasn't played because defense has been hard. And they've really kind of hammered this point home. They talked about it, right? When he went down to the G League for a little bit, he says that he learned that defense is the most important thing to staying on an NBA court. It is if your head coach is Willie Green. It's not necessarily if you play for somebody else. But look, when you score like this, when the Pelicans defense has not been a problem this season, when you look at that, right, they need to play him more. When you have someone that can do that and is a threat, look at how he's already on the scouting report. Teams throw a guy on him. They decide the Dallas Mavericks, who don't have a ton of size, decided to try and go with some, and they put it on Jordan Hawkins instead of going after like a double team on a guy like Jonas Valanciunas. That kind of tells you everything about how well Hawkins was playing and who was scaring the Dallas Mavericks the most. That's an important thing to keep an eye on. He needs to be in the rotation more. Look, I love energy guys like Dyson Daniels, who played very well in this game. We'll touch on him in a moment here, right? Jose, love, right? Look right there. I also like Najee, but at this point, they don't have the explosiveness that Hawkins has. Play those guys, but you need to make sure that Hawkins is getting regular minutes. You'd like to see him get regular minutes with Zion Williamson, with maybe Trey Murphy too. Go back a couple of games, that game against the Golden State Warriors, right? Hawkins and Trey both played. They played on the court at the same time. And you saw a burgeoning two-man game between them, right? With two deep threats like that, incredible shooters out there, what are teams supposed to do, particularly if you have Zion Williamson out there? I get that Willie Green is worried about the defense and what's going to happen to it. But again, every lineup that they have thrown out there has delivered defensively. We're going to do a show this coming week focused solely on the defense. It's probably going to be like the Wednesday show. I want to break down exactly what they're doing defensively, why it's working. We're going to get into the X's and O's, the stats behind it. I think you can continue this defense with Jordan Hawkins out there. Don't forget, since that in-season tournament loss to the Lakers, right? They've had the number one defense in the league. If you can elevate your offense by a couple of spots, even if your defense goes from 1 to 3, that's a good trade-off. And they're inching closer towards having a top 10 offense and a top 5 defense. You can get in the top 10 in both those categories. That's a really good thing. You can get into the top 5 of both of those. You're an elite team and going to be a title contender. They can do that, but it will require playing the rookie Jordan Hawkins more, because we've seen Willie Green be a little bit stubborn. He's showing growth this season, right? But some of the lineups, particularly against the Denver Nuggets, we'll look at those in a minute, kind of the tactical acumen there, was great in this game, not great against the Denver Nuggets. That's, to me, the difference of the wins and losses here, regardless of who is playing. But I think Hawkins at this point definitely needs to be playing more, right? He has looked good, and when you can explode for points like that against the Dallas Mavericks, who, again, sometimes have games like this, so let's take that for what it's worth. But when you look at the circumstances here, right, of playing on the second night of a back-to-back, very little rest, to go out and do that, they're going to be fine defensively. This team, I feel very confident because of the scheme that they run, and again, we'll do a whole show on this, can play Jordan Hawkins more, and he should. The fact that he's just not one-dimensional, which, look, is a surprise to me. I thought he was a good pick based on the shooting alone. Movement shooter, have him move off the ball, catch, shoot, go, you're good. Drain him, space the court, make teams pay, right? Those are the words I use here. But the fact that he got to the line 8 times tonight, The fact that he got 5 rebounds, including 3 offensive boards to keep possessions alive, 4 assists, moving the ball, 2 steals, and 6 of 12 from 3. He's got to be in the lineup. He's a well-rounded player, and I think it's surprising a lot of us, myself included, and that means you've got to play him more, and that's something this team really needs to be doing. He needs to be a fixture in the rotation going forward. Let me know if you agree or disagree here in the comments on the live episode of Locked On Pelicans here. One more segment to go. Let's talk about Valanciunas. Let's talk about kind of the tactical decisions the Pelicans did in this game versus the ones that went poorly for them against the Denver Nuggets. And then bonus 4th segment where I'll answer your questions. Say hi to y'all. Interact with the chat for a little bit here on a Saturday night. I appreciate everyone, instead of going out partying, getting in the Mardi Gras spirit, being here with me. More on this game, the Denver Nuggets game, than your questions coming up in today's bonus live episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I'm excited to tell you about FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here. Basketball's underway, and it's the best time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place any $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets on any $5 bet. Win or lose, you place a bet, you already won $150. There's no reason not to download that FanDuel app. I love it because it's super easy to use. It's laid out well, and I can find all of the different betting options that I want. I love the same game parlays. Jordan Hawkins to have more than 18.5 points, I think it was his number in this one, and the Pelicans to win. You get a bigger payout when all of those things happen. You can find new bets in the Explore tab. They have the Parlay Hub to find the popular parlays that people are jumping on, and so many more different options. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to make your first bet a layup. Again, $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL and the official sportsbook of Locked On. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast. Comedy like nobody else does. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Available wherever you get your podcasts and right here on YouTube where you're joining me for a live show. And this is a lot of fun here. So this is absolutely great. Pelicans getting a somewhat unexpected win. But when you saw how they played, there you go. So if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments. If you want, if you subscribe or listen to it on the podcast form, rate it 5 stars. Leave a comment there too. That helps. Do anything to support the channel. Tell a friend about the show because look, Pelicans are rolling right now. This could have been 2 losses for them. Instead, they go 1-on-1, which I find to be a very big victory. And if you only listen 1 day a week, start listening 2 days a week, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, you'll get to 5. We're going to give you the content you want. We're going to break down the Pelicans defense. Probably on Wednesday, this is the Monday show. Tuesday will be a recap of the next Dallas Mavericks game. On Monday, kind of midday game on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Tuesday shall be the recap of that. Wednesday, we'll hopefully get into the defense, barring some other unexpected news. But that's going to be a fun show. A lot of X's and O's talk. I'm excited to get into all of that and break it down because I think the Pelicans are a very good defensive team, and I want you to know why. So tactical adjustments. That's what I got this one titled here on YouTube. Let me ask you this. Do you think, and this is a bit of a rhetorical question, you can answer in the comments here. Do you think Willie Green coached a good game against the Denver Nuggets? Denver winning 125-113. I don't think the final score was as close as that, right? The Denver Nuggets had a 22-point lead at one point in that one. Really 20 points throughout until Zion just decided to go off in the fourth quarter. Just a little too much, a little too late. Do you think Willie Green coached a good game? Nikola Jokic in this one had a triple-double in like 20 minutes of action here. You know, you had guys like Michael Porter Jr. just be everywhere. 20 points, 10 rebounds for him. Aaron Gordon, I thought, was great, shooting almost 60% from the field, right? You had Jamal Murray chipping in with 20 points. I don't think the Pelicans had a good game plan going in. And that was an example of Willie Green being probably a little bit too stubborn with what he likes to do. You know, you're down 22 points and he's running very defensive lineups that have no shooting and just make life difficult for Zion Williamson. One of the things I've said when people kind of criticize Zion this year is that I don't think he's actually been playing that poorly. I think that, you know, teams are just guarding him differently. They're focusing in on him more defensively than ever before, and it's leading to a lot of spacing issues and just making life harder for him to be able to go out and kind of do his thing. You can't, even as good as he is, can't score over 4 guys at the rim. So when it's Zion, Dyson Daniels, Najee Marshall, someone else, and then another person, you can't do anything about it because there's just no spacing, and those guys aren't going to hit shots to make teams pay for what they're doing to Zion. It's a problem, right? So when you're down 20 points, running a defensive lineup makes me go what are we doing here? Also the defensive game plan against Nikola Jokic seemed wrong. They always try, Willie Green has done this. They always try and play him very small. Jokic is the best player in the league. It's not a question. It's not a question that Nikola Jokic is the best player in the league. He's a Hall of Famer already. He's probably the most unique big man we've ever seen in NBA history. And if you want to beat Denver, it revolves around disrupting him. It's one of those things I always say, right? Anyone other than Nikola Jokic can beat you. And they routinely let Jokic beat him. Remember was it last season, the season before, they went to overtime against the Nuggets, or they were beating the Nuggets, and then they just refused to double team Nikola Jokic, let him just have the ball, and he just scored and scored and scored and beat the team by that, right? It's one of those things here where you need to have a better game plan for your opponent. Now, one of the things that I think is a bit of a myth that people think about the NBA is that you have a different game plan every single night. It really isn't the case, right? The Pelicans know what they do well defensively. They know what they do offensively. And you kind of just know what your strengths are, and you try and go impose those on the game regardless of the opponent. You kind of go in, for the most part, with a very similar game plan, just being we're good at this, so we're going to do it no matter if that team, whether it's working or not. You kind of just try and impose your will that way. But against a team like Denver, who's the defending champions, right? You do need to actually have a different game plan. When Jokic is capable of doing what he does, you need a different defensive game plan. And playing small for the Pelicans just did not work. And once it wasn't working, the fact that they didn't change in the second half was very frustrating. They lost that game because I think Willie Green was outcoached. And that led to the players having problems. This game here against the Dallas Mavericks, the Pelicans knew what the advantage was. It was get the ball to Jonas, let him kind of work, and when the defense collapses in on him, let's kick the ball out, move it around. That's why Hawkins was able to get some of the shots that he did. It's why Dyson Daniels was able to get the shots that he did. It's why Herb Jones was able to get a lot of the shots that he did in this game. And all of those guys I thought played very, very well. Same for Jose going 3 for 8 in this one here. Those guys got open looks because of the way the team was playing. It was a smart game plan by head coach Willie Green to know what their big advantage was here. Dallas don't have any good center depth whatsoever. Their starting center wasn't playing. There's no Luka Doncic to set those guys up. Pick on them. Pick on them big time. And the Pelicans did. And look at what it did. They had no business winning this game. They had some business winning this game. But you get what I'm saying. No Zion, no CJ, no BI. You're missing your 3 best players. Trey Murphy's out. 4 of your top 5, top 6 guys are out. This was a schedule loss. And they said, no way, right? They were like, no, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to go out and play hard. We're going to have a game plan. It's going to work. And they elevated the game for it. That's impressive by this team. That is Willie Green showing that he knows what it takes to win these games, but also that there's still room and growth. One of the things I have said, I am happy that, this team isn't hitting their full potential yet. That sounds weird, right? I'm glad they're not as good as they could be. It just means there's room to grow. If this was their ceiling, right? If Willie Green coached a perfect game against the Denver Nuggets and they still lost by 20, that's not great. Things different in that game, if they make some way better changes, some kind of obvious changes that we would expect from them, they could have beaten the Denver Nuggets. Not saying they would have, they could have, right? Here, the Pelicans could have given up, but a smart game plan worked. This Pelicans team is here and their ceiling is up here. That's actually not a bad spot to be in. I'd rather them have room to grow. You look at a team and this is an extreme example, the Detroit Pistons, right? Where's that team got room to grow? right? You look at Dallas even. Where's their room to grow with the team that they have? Not just this game, but other games too, right? Are they hitting their ceiling? It feels like they might be hitting their ceiling. So that makes me feel confident about it. Sacramento, who New Orleans has beaten 4 times already this season. They're hitting their ceiling, right? Like, does that team have like another level? I don't really think so. The Pelicans do. That's what makes this team so scary. That's what should make you as a fan so excited for what this team is capable of doing. That's what, when I look at this and you want like kind of the optimism about them, they're nowhere close to hitting their potential. Now, you need to actually hit it. It's one thing to say they have potential to do so much more, but you got to get there. The coach needs to make sure he's growing too. I think we've seen growth from Willie Green. We've seen growth from this team. We've seen growth from the players overall. And the fact that they're not hitting their ceiling, when this team does, it's an if, I'm not going to guarantee that they do, but it's still not halfway through the season. They're in a good spot here, right? This team is now 24-16. That puts them in a tie for 5th. That's a good spot. This is a quality team here, and yeah, I'm excited for what the future has. This win should make you very optimistic too. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a little Locked On Pelicans after dark here. I'm going to wrap up the show. I'm going to hit the outro card. Stay on with me on YouTube. I'm going to get into the chat with you. That's coming up here next in a bonus just on YouTube segment here on Locked On Pelicans late on a Saturday night. So as always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Recap the game on Tuesday. This is the Monday show. Defense on Wednesday. It's going to be a fun week here. Let's start to answering your questions coming up next on YouTube, or if you're listening on the podcast form, I'll see you next time. All right. Let's keep going here. Locked On Pelicans kind of after dark on a Saturday night. So I appreciate y'all hanging out with me again. We are the #1 Pelicans podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Don't forget, I co-host the Wednesday episode of Locked On NBA. If you want some just general NBA talk, I don't plug it enough on here. That's our big national show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's there Monday through Friday, different hosts. I co-host the Wednesday episode. That show does big numbers, one of the top NBA podcasts in the world, and it's awesome to be a part of. So if you want to hear me just talking general NBA, we cover the biggest stories there. That's a fun one, but I plug like 3 other things, then we'll get into your questions here. So put your questions here in the chat. Locked On Saints, Ross Jackson breaking down everything black and gold. I don't know if he's hanging out in here having a fun Saturday night, which is fine by me if he's doing that, but he's often here in the chat watching these shows. I hang out with him. Make sure that you are following along with him for everything black and gold. And where did my promo for this go? Let me go pull it up. Have you heard about, you have if you're an everydayer of Locked On Pelicans, that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, great win for the Pelicans. Again, we think Jordan Hawkins should be getting more minutes. I think we're like universally agreed on that one. We don't need to kind of like break down the rotation here, but for at least like 10-15 minutes minimum, let's answer your questions here when it comes to everything. So put them here in the chat for me. I see Jonathan Bordeaux says, should the Pelicans try and go for CP3 as a backup point guard during, I'm assuming, this season? No, I don't think you can make it work in terms of salaries, right? That wouldn't be, you have to have salaries match in the NBA. So if you send money out, you need to have the same amount of money come in, more or less. There's some tweaks to it. What is Chris Paul's contract this season with the Golden State Warriors? I'm going to pull it up in the trade machine right now. Is this even, no, there's like no way you can do it unless you're basically sending out CJ McCollum, and I'm not sending out CJ McCollum in a trade for Chris Paul. So we're just going to shoot that idea right now. Brandon Thibodeau says, hey, Jake, Hawk needs minutes, but whose does he take? Look, I think you can limit Najee's there. I think you dial some back for Jose Alvarado and some others too. Dyson as well, right? Dyson has struggled at times offensively. The defense has been good, but the offense has struggled. He's looked good in some games, not in others. I think if anything, you scale some of their minutes back and then put Hawkins into the rotation too, but he definitely needs to be getting more minutes. I think it's like those three guys are the ones that you would really do anything with here. Let me see. Lils Wold Jr. 504 Mardi Gras jerseys this year. No, the City Edition jerseys are the skeleton jerseys, and I kind of like that they took a break from the Mardi Gras jerseys this year. Brian Wenzel says Hawk future CJ spot, maybe. Trey too. Those guys could. Eventually they're going to move on from CJ McCollum as the team gets expensive, with Trey getting an extension this coming off season, other things. They're in a salary cap crunch. It's something that I've covered a lot here, right? That's why I also expect them to be a little bit quiet at the trade deadline. If you haven't listened to that show, I believe it's Monday's show from this past week, where I break down their salary cap, where they are in the luxury tax, and how that's going to impact what they do at the trade deadline. One thing I want to say that I'm proud of this was at the trade deadline last year, I said they weren't going to trade Jackson Hayes. They didn't trade Jackson Hayes because I said they were worried about the salary cap this year, right? And lo and behold, they didn't trade Jackson Hayes. They let him walk and go to the Lakers for free. But if they had traded him and brought in $7 million of salary back for him, they'd be deep into the tax, and they'd likely be needing to trade a guy like CJ or Brandon Ingram or Zion. That's not a good position to be in. We talked about that here on Locked On Pelicans, the only place that was saying that. So go listen to that salary cap episode from last Monday if you haven't already, because that's an important thing here to keep in mind with what they're going to be doing here. All right, let's keep looking at some of your questions here. I like this one. Ben Crabtree, how possible is it that the Lakers missed the play-in? I don't think it's possible. They've not been playing well. They've been under a lot of pressure. You're hearing all the stories come out of like them being stressed, everything kind of like being bad around them. They're losing right now as I'm recording this, right? Let me pull it up. I saw they were playing the Jazz. Jazz were scorching hot in one of the weirdest teams here. Lakers are losing 116-109 to the Jazz here. They're under 500. I still think they'll figure it out. LeBron's regressed a little bit this year, still good. Anthony Davis is playing some of the best basketball of his career, to be honest. I know we hate saying that here, but he's been playing really well. They're on the outside looking in. I don't know if Utah's going to be able to keep it up. I don't know if Houston's necessarily going to be able to keep it up, but both teams seem to be going for it. It's going to be a battle for it. Maybe it's 50-50. They end up missing the play-in tournament, which is probably actually kind of like good odds for that sort of thing here. Eric Peterson says, what can Willie do to keep Jonas fresh? He seems like he might get worn down with all these minutes in games. I mean, part of it is that, your other stars just need to step up and take on the load that he takes on at times. But I think he's still relatively fresh. There's some games where he doesn't play like a ton, right? Because they need to go with Larry Nance Jr., who's played awesome basketball recently. So when that's happening, his minutes can be lower. Let me see his minutes. His minutes per game are 26.8, right? Herb is playing more. Zion's playing more. CJ, Brandon Ingram are playing more. He's fifth in terms of minutes per game. He might have played the most minutes, though. Let me see here. Second most minutes, because he's played in 39 games, but they do keep him to be fresh. Also, that's kind of the player he is, right? Like, he's just reliable, doesn't really break down. So I don't know if we need to borrow a problem for the future here when it comes to all of those things here. Cayman Brown says, what does it take for Zion to be aggressive for the whole game as he was in the fourth against the Nuggets? I love the guy, but when he's not taking shots, I feel more confident when he's off the floor. I mean, this is, again, what I talked about a little bit earlier in the show, and something that I've been talking about a lot, right? He's not making shots because they're walling him off. If you look at how defenses are defending him, it is different than in years past. There's 3-4 guys around the rim all the time whenever he has the ball, and it's hard to go score through that. That means other guys are open. So when those guys are open, they need to hit their shots. That is not something that they've done a ton, partially because the Pelicans don't take a lot of three-pointers, right? They take 31.3 per game. That's 28th in the league. They need to up that number. Part of that is Brandon Ingram doesn't take as many three-pointers as he should be taking. Right? He's taking 3.7 per game. It feels like that number needs to be higher. Herb Jones, who's starting to shoot the ball well from three, needs to maybe be taking more. He's up to 37.7%. That's higher than Brandon Ingram's 3-point percentage. Instead of being scared to take those shots. Once that happens, or they need to play Trey Murphy more, or start Trey Murphy, or play Hawkins more with Zion, right? All of these things will eventually pull guys out of the paint, and then Zion can be aggressive. But when he gets aggressive, when there's 3-4 guys around the rim, it often ends in a turnover and is a mess. So it's not necessarily that they're better when he's off the court. It's just a different offense, and the team is being defended differently. If these guys are hitting their shots, and Zion's having a quiet game and getting like 8, 9, 10 assists, we're not going to be complaining. It's when they miss their shots that this team drops games, and that's when the offense stagnates, right? Look at the Denver Nuggets game when it's Zion and Alvarado and Dyson and Herb and Najee out there, or whatever combination it was. That's a problem. So Zion is going to go into 4 guys. Why kick it out to one of those guys that's not going to make one of those shots? That's kind of the problem here. So that's where you need to kind of find the balance of offense and defense with all of that. And that's how I think Zion's most effective. I don't want him to be aggressive just to be aggressive if it means he's going to turn the ball over with everything here. West Bank Rick says the only person I need to see traded is still Kyrie Lewis Jr. Look, I think that's the most likely thing. That's how they get under the luxury tax. There's no need to pay the luxury tax for Kyrie Lewis Jr. If you make a trade and bring in a better player, someone that would contribute, upgrade your team, you pay the luxury tax for that. You don't need to pay the luxury tax for Kyrie Lewis Jr. here. Nola Moley, this is a great question. You talked about the team still getting better and Coach Green improving. Even with that, do you think we have what it takes to beat the Nuggets in a series? Would we need to have the higher seed? So this goes to the trade deadline talk, and I really like this question because it gets into some team building philosophy and questions here, right? The Denver Nuggets are the defending champions. I think Nikola Jokic is the best player in the league. Like, it's not a question to me. If you know you're going to have to beat Denver in a playoff series, do you need to have kind of like a Nikola Jokic stopper? Can you build a team that can both compete in the regular season and postseason with a guy that's kind of a specialized player like that? That is easier said than done, right? Jokic, no one slows down Jokic. That's kind of the problem, right? So they have proven that they are capable of beating the Denver Nuggets. Jonas Valanciunas isn't the answer there. Larry Nance Jr. isn't the answer there. I think it's one of those things where if you get into that series, you got to outscore them. So that means more Hawkins, more Trey, better starting lineups for that. Assuming you don't make a trade for like a Jared Allen kind of guy who can compete against Jokic but isn't going to neutralize him. It's just, that's going to be a tough series, and it might come down to the Pelicans simply making their shots or not. They were up 18, 20 points on Denver in Denver earlier in the season. They beat them at home. They're very capable of beating the Denver Nuggets. We've seen it. New Orleans has played them well the past couple of years. Better tactical decisions, as we talked about in the third segment of this show, and other things. And I think they're capable of beating it without overhauling the roster. But it's something that you need to consider, that if you don't view your team beating the Nuggets in a 7-game series, well, you're not going to make the NBA Finals, and that's a problem. And maybe you need to reconfigure your roster to beat that specific team. That's definitely a thing here. 99 Dog says, do you think Ingram's injury is what's slowing him down? I mean, no, I think this is just rest. Like, I don't think there's much to this, and I think they're just listing him as rest, and it's everything here. Mr. Pfister says, do you think Zion is playing half speed to stay fresh all year? If so, I'm okay with that until the last quarter of the season. I think part of it's that a little bit. I think it's, again, how he's being defended. Look at it. Like, watch the film of it. You can go to NBA.com and see all this. It's not easy for him right now because the Pelicans don't have spacing and shooting threats around him. If they add that and do more of those type of offensive lineups, you'll watch him flourish. I think he's going to have a big second half of the regular season. Mr. Barnes, Jonah Barnes here. This ish more than a game. I should have worn the shirt if I knew you were going to be in here, man. I would have put that one on for you. Would you, go after someone like Jared Allen if he can be had, or would you let the team stay as constructed? Look, if you can get Jared Allen and it's not like the most expensive upgrade, I would do it. The way I've described it is this. Their draft picks are getting a little bit limited or don't look as appealing as they once did. I think Jonas is playing well. Played well tonight, right? I think we're all singing his praises. We seen him play well against the Golden State Warriors too. I might sneeze while I'm doing this. This is why I'm making like weird faces. We've seen him play well against the Golden State Warriors and carry this team. Larry Nance Jr. has played exceedingly well since he's come back from injury. So I don't know if you need to upgrade the center position as like in a dire situation. I don't think they need much rim protection, because I'll explain that this coming week on Wednesday when I talk about the defense and what they're doing. If you don't let teams into the paint, do you need rim protection? So given somewhat limited resources, I'd rather upgrade maybe the backup point guard spot that can orchestrate the offense with some of that second unit, and maybe look to add a little bit more shooting if you can. If you can, turn Najee into a hustle guy that shoots as well, or even if that's Matt Ryan, I think that could be a really great thing. Those are where I'd rather spend the resources. If those don't exist, and if you can't get Tyus Jones because the money's a little bit weird to make that work, yeah, go get Jarrett Allen if you think that's like the upgrade. So I think it would be fine if they do that. I would do that as kind of like a last resort sort of thing here. Rudito Gaming, would CP3 consider Pels if bought out? Probably not. Also, they're still in the luxury tax. I'd pay it for signing him on a vet minimum, but I don't think that's going to be a great situation. I also don't think he's going to get bought out by the Warriors. Let's get into a couple more of the questions here, and then, just jump to the end here. Carter DiMaggio says, what do you think of those Alec Burke trade rumors to NOLA? I have not seen that at all. I don't hate that. Again, I don't know if I would give up much for him. I'm literally looking up the rumors right now here. He makes $10 million. Oh, that's weird. I'm not really sure if that's like the kind of guy that I would go after. That one's I don't know. Like, I got to think about him a little bit more. Don't hate the idea, but I'd rather go after Tyus Jones. Someone like that is who I'd really be trying to push for here. What are his numbers this season? Yeah, no, I wouldn't go after him. I'd go after other guys. Shooting 38%. He's a good 3-point shooter on like limited-ish volume. Doesn't give you the assists that I would really like for him, but some help on the wing. I don't know. Roll with Matt Ryan instead, I think, with that sort of type of need of a player here. Rafiq Messiah says, if you had the power, would you rest BI and CJ on Monday? No, I would play them. I want them all playing games. And so I think that's important here. Henya, do you think BI is driving the ball to the basket more because he's not comfortable taking more threes? No, I'd rather you drive to the basket over taking threes if the space is there and trying to score. So I think that's an important thing. He's done a very good job of driving to the basket. The way you look at it is in terms of kind of hierarchy of shots. We talked about efficiency earlier on in the show. One of the things that I look at is with shot type and then possession type, right? Sam Amico's not bad. So one of the things that I look at is, again, efficiency. So, right, the most efficient shot you can get in the NBA is a free throw. Second most efficient shot is a shot at the rim, right? In the restricted area, teams shoot significantly higher there. You're just closer to the basket, right? It makes sense. Free throws are unbothered. They convert at a higher rate in terms of point per shot type. Third is then corner three, then 3-pointers. So if you're looking at it in terms of hierarchy of shots simply on that, getting to the rim and attacking the basket where you have a chance for an and one over shooting a three is definitely the move. I don't think he's driving more because he's not comfortable shooting the three. I think it's just that's a smart thing to do. Now, it's only smart if that's there and you shouldn't force it, in which case then you want him to be taking more threes. I see ABJ504 with the comment in there. I don't know if P-Lids is in here with us. He always says, hi, Jake. I know a lot of y'all are here. I saw another good question here. Oh, here it is. Frank McRae, what do you think about trading for Jaden Ivey from Detroit? I talked about this in the Trade Target show. That was Tuesday's show, Wednesday's show, I forget which. Yeah, I'd love it. I don't think Detroit's giving him up. Why would they? He, as I said in that show, is a former 5th overall pick from a year ago, right? They're not giving up on him. That team's not good. They're stocked at the guard position in terms of young talent with Thompson, Ivey, Cade Cunningham, Killian Hayes. They have 4 young guards, but you know what? Who knows who's sticking around on the worst team we've seen in a really long time. So yeah, if you can get them for cheap, but if you use a first-round pick to get him, I'd take a flyer on that, but other teams would outbid you for that, I think. So that's kind of part of the problem. He also has the 4th most minutes on Detroit. I don't think he's getting traded from there or anything like that. So I think that's one of the things that I love people kind of throwing those out, but I don't think that is going to be a realistic option here. Joshua Louvier says the Pelicans are 5-2 in the month of January with the so-called hardest schedule. If we continue to play like this for the rest of the month, our good luck and for the rest of the month. Look out, NBA. Good luck. Yeah, look, this was the toughest part of their schedule. I was worried about this, and they've outperformed. That tells you a lot about the team. It shows the growth. It's why you should be optimistic. Again, this was a very good win here for this team. So I'm pretty happy with what we've seen, and let's keep it rolling on Monday. Kind of weird midday game on MLK Day. I love that because it means you do get a lot of school children going to this game, a game that they wouldn't normally be able to go to. So it's really cool. Pelicans used to have one of these every single year, and it was one of the highlights of the year. So looking forward to watching that on Monday. We'll then have a show out for you after that. I don't know if it'll be live or not. We'll see how I'm feeling on Monday. It might be live, though, especially if they win, and maybe do this again. So that's going to do it here for a little bit of Locked On Pelicans After Dark for y'all. I appreciate all the questions. I appreciate you all tuning in and staying here with me. This has been a lot of fun. Great win for the Pels. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Tell a friend about the show. The team has been good, right? Team has been good. We want to keep them still big. I don't even know what I'm saying. It's late. I'm a little tired. Tell your friends. Get them listening. Don't let them ask dumb questions about the Pelicans, and get them clued into the Locked On Pelicans podcast, #1 Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at Nola Jake on Twitter. I'll see y'all on either Monday afternoon, Tuesday, whenever you're listening. That'll be the next show after the next Dallas Mavericks game. See y'all. Enjoy your evening.